And welcome back once again to the science fiction landscape. I hope you're not sick of it yet. I know I'm not, and I'm excited for this tutorial as we take a look at finishing off the scene in Blender. Let's get started. Okay, so we've got everything built. We've got our egg built, we've got our rock spires, we've got our ground, we've got the materials, but we're not quite done with Blender yet, and I'll show you why. First off, let's get our frame. I want to go to the in frame because we're going to look at our overall lighting and rendering just to kind of polish off and finish the scene. So let's move our playhead all the way to the end. Now, because we've changed our aspect ratio to the CinemaScope size, our framing is a little off with the camera. So I'm just going to fix that first. I'm just going to grab the X rotation of the camera, tilt it up a little bit so I get a nice center frame on my egg. And then I'm going to hit the I key to set a new keyframe. And oops, I wasn't over my old keyframe, so now it's going to jump. But that's okay. I'll just click on the keyframe, hit G to grab, move it over one, and just overwrites that frame. Okay, so we've got our keyframe. Now I'm going to set up my view a little differently so it's a bit easier to view everything now that we've got this big wide screen. I want to have a bigger look at my render frame. So let's see, I'm going to get rid of that and we're going to add a new screen. Just click up in the corner, get a little drag down. And let's also drag down our timeline. We can bring it back up if we need it later. And I'll just get it so we've got the full view. And I'm going to get rid of my little viewer thing on the side there. And let's switch this top one back over to the shader editor. Okay, now let's take a look at our scene and talk. So let's switch to rendered. And also I'm going to hit Control-Alt-B to get rid of the box selection for our render view. And okay, so often when you work hard, you build something, you put all these things together, and you've got all these really intricate systems at play. And we look at this image here, right? And I'll be honest, it's not quite working. I mean, there's a couple of problems with it. There's some things in here that just kind of make it overall just look a bit almost amateur. It's a bit lame. I don't know if you feel that way, but that's how I do when I look at this. Now I could begin to pinpoint, exactly what it is about this image that's making me feel that way and what we need to change to get it out of that zone and into the really cool looking, awesome scene zone, which is where we want to get to. But take a minute for yourself and just look at this image and think about, what's the problems? What are the things that you're seeing that are standing out to you? Now, one of the big questions to ask when you're creating a scene is what makes this scene special? What's the thing that really makes this scene go, oh, that's cool? Now, for this particular scene, I think the thing that makes it really cool are these glowing red kind of pockmarks in this dark volcanic rock. The contrast of this really hot color next to this really dark rock is what's going to be the real thing that really makes this scene make it look great. Right now, one of the problems is we've got a lot of red kind of peeking through. Okay, we've got a lot of cracks and stuff, and they're working. I mean, they're interesting systems that we've built, but there's just so much of it that the red isn't special. And there's also no contrast. The rocks themselves are a bit too light to really make this interesting. The other thing is it's just really flat. The lighting across the whole thing is just really flat and uninteresting. And we're getting these extreme highlights on our specular, which is kind of strange. And same with our egg. You can tell we've got a light there and we've got a light there. And we're trying to create a space scene. Okay, we don't want to see our lights in the scene. Like that's lame. So those are the things that we're going to tidy up to just bring this image home. And I really hope that you're going to be excited to see how it changes. So what you're going to see, like from where we're at right now and where we end up at the end of this tutorial, I think is going to be pretty big in terms of the visual difference. Okay, so let's see how far we can go. All right, now first thing I want to do is I want to turn off our lights because the lights are actually creating a lot of this problem, and we want to begin to light the scene with the environment by itself a little bit. We might still add in some lights, but for right now, let's just try that. All right, so I'm going to take my two sun lamps and I'm not going to delete them. I'm just going to turn them off, being visible in the viewport. I also want to turn them off in render because I don't want to accidentally render this and get those lights to affect the scene. So up here where you've got this little filter icon, we're going to click that and we're going to click on the camera image and that's for rendering, and we're going to turn them off for rendering as well. Okay. Now let's see. First thing I want to do is I want to speed things up a little bit. I feel like the render is going really slow. I'll turn these back on so we can see. There's one other point I want to make. So in our shader, if I click on one of the rock spires, you can see we've got rock spire surface, and there's 2 points I want to make. The first one is it's been a few weeks since we've looked at this shader, right? Now, what the heck is going on? Look at this mess. It's all over the place, right? It's really tough to approach something like this and figure out what's doing what? How does this work again? So it's really important I'm kind of using this mistake as an example for you to learn from. It's really great to label things, okay? Make them clear. Whenever you're building something, try and build it in a way that you can explain it to anyone so that you could, if you're working in a team, you want to be able to hand your project off to a teammate and they need to be able to look at what's going on and instantly know, oh, cool, this bit is what controls the bright red pock marks. This bit controls the cracks. Got it. I just need to adjust that. Without the labels, without all that stuff, it's kind of a big mess. Now, I mean, we can label individual bits in the graph itself. So like say this one here, it says color ramp. We could label it, this does something, and bam, okay, it's labeled. Great. We can even color it. Say, okay, I'm going to make this, one red because it's important. Sorry, it's going really slow because the rendering. I am going to go back to solid mode. There we go. So we can make it red, So now it's okay. That's really clear. Another thing we can do is you can have in the add menu and layout, you have the frame. So you can make a frame and we can drag it out and then we can grab, a couple of different things. Anything you drop onto the frame, it'll encapsulate those things. And then you can label that frame, something, and color it and blah, blah, blah. So that's a great way to kind of keep things organized. But we didn't do that. So yeah, good luck to us. Thankfully, I jumped in beforehand and figured it all out again. So don't worry. All right. So let's first thing I want to do. I noticed that with our texture. So one of the reasons it might be running really slow on your computer, it's definitely running on mine, and mine's pretty beefy. One of the things is we're using this ambient occlusion node in our shader. We've got it here and we've got it here. And, we were doing that to try and bring out the detail of our rocks. But I'm finding it's not actually helping us all that much. And it's giving us like a pretty big overhead in terms of computer cost. So I'm going to switch back to solid mode so we can get some easy control. I'm going to delete those. We're not going to use that. And I'm going to connect up our original Rockspire image that we created. So remember, this is the base noise that we created that's kind of driving the way things are looking. And I'm going to plug that in to where that used to go. So plug that one into there, and this one went into there. And remember, we've got two versions of this texture that we got to manage now. So we've got the Rockspire surface. Now you don't want to click up here and change to the other one to work on it because it's actually going to replace whatever object we've got selected. So we've got one of these rocks selected. It'll actually give it the other texture. So this is like assigning a texture. So we're going to click on the object that we've got. And so now we've got rock ground. I'll do the same thing. Delete ambient occlusion there and there. And then we're going to hook this one up to the factor and that one up to the factor here. All right, cool. Now, if we jump back to rendered mode, it's going to render a whole lot quicker for us. And that will just make life easier. Okay, let's turn our lights back off. Sorry, I just clapped in your ears. Oh. All right, let's turn our lights back off. Great. Okay, so here's our scene. First thing you want to do is get our environment to light the scene a bit better. Now, I'm going to show you a cool trick to do that. We're going to switch from object mode in our shader graph to world mode. And this is, of course, the graph that's creating our stars and our space. And remember, we have it animated. But we're going to actually change things so that the thing our camera sees is going to be this, because this is what we want it to look like. But we want to have the scene itself, in terms of the lighting and the objects, see something a little different, something with more light, so that we can brighten the scene up, have a bit more control. All right, this is a great trick. I use this a lot, so this is very, very handy, and it's a bit obscure, so if you don't know about it, then you can't do it, obviously. All right, we are going to add a, let's see, I'm going to grab a mix RGB. Oops, sorry. mix RGB, and I'm going to grab a curves. I'm going to use the curves to brighten up everything. And then I'm going to grab a cool little node called a, let's see, where is it? I'll get the actual thing. There it is, light path. So the light path node. The light path node, it basically gives us a breakdown of all the different types of rays in our scene. So everything fires a ray. So a light fires a light ray, and it bounces off something. And so like wherever we've got glossies, like on our egg, we've got a lot of glossy on that egg. So it's a bit confusing because the attribute in the egg material isn't called glossy, but it's the roughness value, right? So wherever a roughness is, closer to 0, so it's less rough and it's more reflective, right? Remember from last tutorial. Wherever you've got that going on, it's firing glossy rays. So things are bouncing off, and it's going, oh, this is a glossy image, it's a glossy texture, so bouncing a glossy ray off of that. Same with like reflection, diffuse. This is the diffuse color. We don't have to go through all these things because it's pretty deep, this, but the main one the one I really use a lot is this one, the top one. So is camera ray. And this basically means it's asking, is the ray that's hitting the object from the camera? So the camera itself is actually firing rays into the scene so that the camera knows what it sees, if that makes sense. Okay, so if the camera is seeing it, we want it to look one way. If the objects are seeing it, we want to look another way. So the objects are all looking at what's around them to get their lighting information. So we're going to create a little kind of a switch to make that happen. So I'll just give ourselves a little more room, and we're going to take the color of our sky and we're going to plug it into color. Don't plug it into factor because that'll turn it black and white. I'm going to send it into the color. And I'm going to increase this curve up. So that's really going to brighten the scene. We can actually have a look at that. If I do this, you can see, okay, we've made this super bright scene. Pop that back out, put this back in. In fact, let's even, we're not going to do it from here. We're going to do it from here. So we're getting the stars as well. Yeah, there we go. That's what we want. All right, so we've got this really bright scene. And I'm also going to add in, well, I'll do that in a minute. So let's take the camera ray is going to be the factor. So what that means is if it's a camera ray, we want it to be a factor of 1 and fully use the first color. If it's not a camera ray, factor 0, and we're not going to use the first color at all. We're just going to use the second color. Okay. I think I may have just told you that backwards, by the way. I'm not sure which one it impacts first, but we'll get it right. Okay, so the first color is going to be our really bright version, and then that's right. And then this non-brightened version is going to be the second option, and then we're going to pipe that through here now. Okay, we got it right. So the camera ray. So if it's a camera ray, which is us in our view, you can see it goes here. It says, "Yep, we're looking through the camera," and because we're looking through the camera, we're only going to see this bit. So it only shows us color 2. All the objects, however, you can see, especially with our sphere, it's seeing something different. So it's actually reflecting this sky. So you can tell if I turn this down, it's now reflecting this sky, which is fully turned off because I've just darkened it. So I'll brighten that up again. And I want to add a little more control into this, just a little more lightness. So let's add in another, I'll just duplicate this. And we're going to put it before everything else. Before we do this camera ray thing, I'm going to pop it here. And we're just going to, so right now, if I have this set to 0, it's the same as what it was before. We're just introducing just a bit of gray into the scene. So I'll just bring that up maybe to like 0.4 or something. And what's cool about this is, we can just brighten everything up. Now we're not seeing the effect on the rocks because our texture needs to be tweaked a little bit to do that. But you can really see it with the egg. We can also add in a little bit of color. So this is a great way to like tint it, to go, let's tint things blue a little bit. That looks really cool. All right, turn that like right up. Okay. All right, now let's fix our material. So I'm going to select one of these objects, and I'm also going to switch back to object mode. So we'll start with the spires themselves, and let's get to work. Okay, first I want to, like I said before, we want to make these spots special, and they're not right now because we've got so much stuff going on. So first thing we're going to do is turn down these cracks. Not turn them off, we're just kind of reducing the way we're using them. And the control for the cracks is coming from right up here, because if you remember, this is where we're creating our cracks, and then we're adding them into the base image. So if I turn this to 0, you can see they're going off the spires. Now remember, the ground is a different texture, so we'll have to do this for the ground as well. I want to turn this up just a little bit to like 0.3, so we've got some shining through. Actually, I might bring it up a little bit more. And then this factor is controlling how much all these cracks are being mixed in overall. So I can turn it down here, make it a little bit more subtle. Now let's click the ground. We'll do the same thing. So we'll just bring this down to like 0.3 again, and we'll keep that with here. We might match up our values a little bit more later. I might even turn it off the ground just for now. Yeah, cool. Okay, now let's go back to our main object. And we need to fix up a few things since we changed the way the stuff behaving by plugging into this. One of the things that's happening is that our roughness and our specular are pretty much like set to nothing, like they've been blown out. So this one right here is clamping down this image in a way that we don't really need it to anymore. So I'm just going to drag it right out, and immediately you can see we start to see our texture again. Also want to change, I've got full black, full white, and I'm going to just bring this up a little bit so it's gray, and bring this one down a little bit. Remember, this was one of the tips I was saying earlier, to never use full white and black values. It helps with realism overall. I'll do the same for the ground. Drag that out, raise it up a little bit, and bring this one down. There we go. All right, so you can see it's already starting to look a lot cooler. Okay, these things are special again, which is great. Now I wanted to tweak the colors a little bit, and see if we could brighten things up a little bit more. Still pretty dark. So let's mess. So this is the color. So the base color of our object. We can follow that back through. It's coming from these two. Which one is kind of weird because it's a bit redundant now. We don't really need this colorant probably because it's like double crushing the image, but we'll just leave it for now, and maybe I'll just unplug it, and let's set the factor so we're just using this one, and then maybe we can bring it back in a minute. Okay, so I'm actually going to flip these. Let's see what that looks like, because I want to brighten it up, so it's just a bit too dark. So I'll put the red at this part, and I'll bring this up a touch. Oh, we're working on the ground. Okay. Again, I keep getting mixed up. I was looking at the spires going, why isn't it changing? Bringing that back down a bit. It's a little too bright. Okay, 0.75 looks pretty good. I'll click on the spires and do the same thing. What do? We unplug that, and we turn that to, yeah. And we flip these. And we are going to brighten this one up to about the same value, which is what, 0.75. That's right. Yeah, oh, no, 0.075. There we go. Might bring the red up a little bit, see if we can notice it some more. That's cool. It's kind of coming in a little bit. And let's do the same for the ground. Click that and just bring it up a bit. Okay, and then let's see. I feel like my specular is a little weird. Just unplug it. Turn it up. See what things look like. Just try plugging this one into it so it matches with the reflection, with the roughness. I mean, yeah, that's cool. Not too bad. I'll put a little bit of metallic into it. Click on the spires, the same thing, put a little bit of metallic, and I'll connect this one to there. Oh, that did a lot there for this one. That looks good. Pull that out, specular tint. Yeah, cool. So we can actually start seeing things now. It's great when you can see the things in your scene. Already it's looking like a million times better just from those little tweaks. So again, just to summarize what we've done, we've just reduced the amount of red in the scene because we want that to be special. Now, one other thing I want to do is improve this. So with the glowing bit, we want to make this even more special. And right now it's just a flat uniform red, right? So I want to have a bit of variation, as if some of these areas are maybe thinner pieces of rock and others are thicker. It'll also help us have a bit more control on our cracks. So right now, all we're doing for our emission, we're in our rock spiral, is we're just plugging in a straight color into the shader, and then we're varying it. We're saying when to do it, when not to do it, based on this texture that we've created. But I want to go a bit further. I want to use this to also determine how much red we want to use. So not just when to use the emission shader, but how much to emit as well, if that makes sense. So let's grab we'll go color ramp. And we're going to grab this as the factor. And get my red, put it up here so I can see it. And I'll click on my white color, and I am going to color pick that red. So now it's going to use this texture, and it's going to color some bits black and some bits red. And then we'll plug this into the color of our emission shader. So the way that's all working, I'll just stretch these out a bit, get rid of that guy. So we've got our emission shader that's taking in this texture here, and this texture is being converted into bright red and black. So instead of black and white, it's red and black. And then that's the color now that's being used in the emission. And so what we get now, these little in the edges, you can see they're going dark, or there's bits here where it's fading off a little bit. I might even make that even more extreme. So I'm going to add another little pip onto our gradient. So I'll hit this little plus sign, and this middle one, I'm going to drag down the darkness a bit. And so now you get even more, the darker bits are kind of even more pronounced. And what I'll do too is I'm going to turn up the emission. I'm going to turn it up to maybe, let's go crazy. Let's turn it up to 10. See what that does. Makes it a bit pink. So maybe 8, 5. 5's good. Still have red. All right. Now that we've done that, though, it's really knocked off those cracks. So we can probably afford to bring them back a little bit. So let's try right here in our factor for the cracks. Bring that up a little bit. And yeah, see, it's cool. They're starting to come in, but they're not glowing as much. So they could become more of like an accent to the look. I'm going to turn it all the way up here. So we've got all of our cracks in, and then maybe turn this one down. And so now you get just this subtle kind of stuff, which is cool. It's still not quite as nice as before. So I'm going to bring that down, and we'll just have a little bit of it in. That should be good. So it's these subtle effects. That's how you sell an image. Subtle effects. Subtlety really, really, really brings it home. All right. And again, it might be looking different for you because you've got different random numbers and stuff in your fractals, but I'm liking that. It looks cool. All right, they're going to bring this into the ground as well. So if you remember, we're using the strength of 5, and we're using this color ramp. So I'm going to hit Control C or Command C if you're on a Mac. I'm going to click on the ground and bring that up here, and let's just paste it and put the color into the color, and this is going to go into the factor. There we go. So now the ground is doing the same thing. I might even try what happens if we go even more extreme with the ground, really darken it off. So there's just a few bits now that really hit the bright red. I'll switch back to my rock spires. I might turn the bump up a little bit on the rock spire. I feel like it's not quite bumpy enough. I'll put it up to 1. We may have to zoom in a bit to get a better idea of what's going on, but let's go up here to the top, and I'm pretty sure it's just this guy that controls the amount of them. Let's find out. We'll just drag this out. Yep, there it is. Yeah, you can see like how bad that looks compared to this. Just overdoing something a little bit, and it can kill the image. Okay, so what I've done is I've switched the Veroni texture from Manhattan to distance. I've kept it at crackle. I brought my scale down to say 21.9. Again, this is going to give different results for you, so you just kind of have to tweak your own. But I also just played around with these and just changed how much they were blending. So we're just cutting off different amounts of the rock or different amounts of the glow. And I just keep pushing and pushing towards a subtle effect. So how can I get a subtle, like not too much of it, you know, just so it stays special. That's what I was trying to get at. And yeah, so all I did was I messed with the scales and I messed with these color ramps, just kind of drag some things around until I got some nice results like this. So yeah. And then what I did was I also played around with the color ramp here just a little bit more. I brought this one forward some more, and I brought the black up a touch, just playing and watching and seeing, you know, what's making things look good, what's making things look bad. Now I want to bring the cracks in a little bit more, so let's see what happens when we turn that back up now. All right, yeah, too many little flecks. I'm going to bring it up here, and it's not bad. A little bit of that is good. Okay, now let's pop back into our ground texture now, and I'll just do the same kind of stuff. And I'll do it with you. So I'm just going to move that to distance like I did in there. And I'm going to just check what scale did I go with? 21. So yeah, let's see what happens if we do that here. It's going to be a very different effect for our ground. So again, we're just going to have to play with the numbers, see what we get, and see what we think about what we get. So you can see already, bam, we've got an image that's looking like just so much better in so many different ways. It's just a lot more interesting than where we started. Now, if we go back into our world and play around with how much we're mixing in this blue color, you can see we can really brighten up our scene. We can take it right down. Nice. All right, so that looks pretty cool. I'm happy. I hope you're happy too. All right, so let's go to our egg real quick and let's just play with that a little bit just to kind of polish that off. I think I just want to change my base color. I'm going to bring it up a little bit. So it's just a bit brighter. The brighter we make it, the more it's going to kind of reflect light into the scene. And I'm going to add a bit of color to it. Let's see what happens if we tint it blue. Darken it down a touch more. That's nice. Change our roughness. I think it looked good there. All right. Okay. Now let's just have a quick look at the way our scene looks when we move back to the beginning, because where we animate our sky. All right, in this perspective, I'm not actually liking the blue on the egg, so I'm going to take that back out. I think it's much better when it's just got this gray color. Okay, so last thing we want to do is just give a little bit more definition to the scene by adding in a light. Okay, so right now we're lighting our scene, pretty much entirely from the environment. and from the red glows, but we just want to add a little bit more punch just to help create some more separation, make the scene look really good. So let's switch over to our 3D viewport. And here's our cool scene. Now let's add in, we're going to add in an area light. And we're going to try and stick it right back here so it's kind of creating a nice rim on our egg object. So let's go ahead and do that. We're going to hit Shift A, light area. Okay, let's just grab it up so we can see it. All right, so it's pointing straight down. What we're going to do first, let's change the shape to a disc. And we're going to rotate it on the X, kind of point it right at our egg. And then we're going to rotate on the Y. I'm set to local. Okay, so yeah, if you're on global, just switch it to local here, and then we'll have the same controls. So I'm going to rotate it on the Y axis. And there we go. Let's point it down a little bit. Rotate on the X. That's cool. And I'm going to grab it and position it about maybe here. Rotate it on the Y a bit more. Just kind of pointing it right at the egg like that. Now I'm going to scale it up. Okay. Make it real big. And let's change the size here as well. And then let's change the power. Let's go really high. Let's try 1,000. That's cool. So now you see we're getting this full rim right around the object. A bit too much directly behind it. So let's move over, touch, and rotate on the Y. Again, I might pull it back some more too, so we can get a little bit of that background. Let's go even further. Let's try 3,000. Nice. Now we can kind of get some of that terrain in there. We were losing some of that before. And then let's add a bit of color to it. So let's put a bit of blue, a little blue tint. Give us that cold environment of space kind of feel. And it really kind of feels like a nice kind of evening look to it. And maybe a bit brighter. Let's try 5,000. I think 3 was doing us a bit better. And I feel like I got a little too much saturation in my color. And pull it back towards white a little bit. And I might push it into some. Rotate on the X, point it down a bit more. Try scaling it down some. Now it's a bit too hot. And there, kind of like spreading it out. Split the difference between the two. Okay. Great. Well, I think that looks pretty good. All right, so there we have it. Our final polished, lit, and fully textured scene. Let's see how it looks at the beginning. Just to make sure it's all right with the light. Yeah, so the light still is doing some nice stuff for us there. Pull back. Our stars start to come out, and we end up with this really cool atmospheric looking science fiction scene. All right, we are going to stop there. I really hope that you got a lot out of this and that you found it fun and enjoyable and interesting and that you're stoked about how it looks, because I'm pretty happy with it too. I think it looks great. We've really come a long way from where we began. And I believe we've got a really believable scene now. Things look really nice, and they're really working together. So I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you enjoyed this series. Our final step is going to be in the next episode. We're going to do our render passes, and we're going to do our final comp. So we're just going to export this thing pretty simply out of Blender and get it into After Effects to just add in a few things like a bit of distance and a bit of atmosphere, and just finalize the overall look of what we've got. So I hope you've enjoyed this. Hope you've learned a lot. Please let me know in the comments if you have any questions or anything you want me to focus on in the future, especially now that we're nearing the end of this series. Just keep engaging, because it's really helpful for me to know what you're thinking of it all. And please like and subscribe as well. Help spread the word. Share it on social media if you can for me. The more people that find out about this, the more people that see it, and the more I'll be able to keep making these. So I really appreciate all the support so far, and glad so much that so many people are enjoying this. All right, I will catch you next time. Have a great week.